Well, here we are, another stop on the journey to finding hope, inspiration, and positivity in this crazy world we all live in. You are listening to Changing the Perspective podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and like this video below. If you are listening on a podcast service, please like our podcast on your preferred service. No matter how you choose to hear this interview, we are grateful you are following us on this journey. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Changing the Perspective. Today, I have something super fascinating for us all. I connected with Dean on another podcast group, the Facebook community of podcasters that are out there. And he posted about being a psychic medium. And I was interested in kind of his background. So he sent me a bio. 24 years military, now retired out of the service. And it sounds like your experience with becoming a medium came out of kind of your last tour or whatever with the military. And so we're excited to hear about that. He's really here to talk to us about kind of how people use his service, clarify a little bit more about what he does and what he provides for people. And then if anyone's searching for a little bit of hope or anything along the journey, hopefully he can answer some questions for us as we go. So Dean, I guess tell us a little bit more about this whole thing and how it came to be.
Sure. Well, first I want to say thanks, Shauna, for inviting me on your program. And it's always an honor to connect with fellow podcasters.
Yes.
But yeah, that's it's been a wild ride. First I want to say, I was not open to psychics. I wasn't open to mediums or spiritual based stuff. I was raised very traditional, religious household. And went to church on Sunday school on Sundays and all that great stuff. And so it wasn't something that it was fostered through my childhood. You got that right. In like the bio says, in my last 3 years in military service, I had just came back from a deployment, kind of set the stage for everybody. I come back from my last deployment, my now almost 15-year-old daughter was about 4 or 5 years old. And my now 10-year-old was just born. I mean, like he was our deployment baby, right? So I got home, I timed it out. My wife always gets mad because she's like, you weren't here for my pregnancy. And I'm like, well, but one of the things was he was born not long after I got home.
Okay.
And so one of the things that it was, a lot of things were ending and a lot of things were beginning, obviously, for me. But really here I was in this, the downhill portion of my military service. And this is when, Shauna, like, I call it all poltergeist hell started busting loose in our home. And what do I mean by that? I mean that, clocks and pictures started coming off the wall, and not just like a little, but it was being like thrown like off the wall.
Oh,
and I was like, holy bejesus, like what is going on? And as a typical guy, I look to make sure that the drywall anchor was in, or was the nail or the screw in the stud, your logic, right?
there's a reason. Yeah.
You want explanations. Like,
Yeah.
you don't immediately, most people typically don't go, oh, well, that's grandma or grandpa trying to get our attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, holy cow. And when it wouldn't stop, and when I was experiencing things that didn't make sense, like why would something come off the wall when it absolutely shouldn't? I mean, defying all logic and laws of physics. And so I had known that my wife, she confided in me when I was in overseas that her and a bunch of girlfriends would go and see this local psychic in our area. And quite honestly, me being me, of course, I got to make a joke out of it. And I started referring to this lady as the voodoo chick. And because that was my language. That was my way. But I got to clarify for everybody listening, she's a good person, does not do voodoo. But that was, and that was my label for her.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, you and your voodoo chick friends, you're going to go, I don't know, spray essential oils on yourself and chant and dance in a circle. And, you just, of course, I'm trying to make light of it because looking back in hindsight, I was probably really uncomfortable with the whole thing.
Yeah.
And right. So we poke fun at that, which we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And at least I did.
Yeah.
And, pretty typical. And so, but the first words out of my mouth when all this activity started happening, I was looked at my wife, Marilyn, and I said, Marilyn, get the voodoo chick on the phone. There's some weird stuff going on. And because, who do you, Shauna, if I came to you and said, oh, Shauna, your tire is low or your brakes need to be replaced, you probably know where to take it, like a mechanic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, or if you need your roof work done or something, who to go to. But if you say, Shauna, you got a ghost in your house, there's, most times now it's becoming a little bit more popular and open, but it's not like you have an ad for Ghostbusters, and if you don't travel in those circles, like who do you reach out to?
Right.
Yeah. And so, we reached out to this lady and she came over and she proceeded. And now you got to remember, I wasn't open to psychics and mediums and, hence the name Voodoo Chick, right? And she came over and she started, she's saging or smudging the house. And if you've ever seen that happen, it's an ancient technique of actually, you can use sage or other products, but basically it's you light it on fire and then put it out and the smoke kind of dissipates. And the idea is to rid negative energies or entities out of your house, like get rid of ghosts, bad vibes, whatever, bad luck, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And so she's walking, she's got the smudge going on and there's sage. And I'm like, oh my God, like what is going on? She's really drinking her Kool-Aid. My head is this going a mile a minute. And I'm like, how much are we paying this lady? And she's like, ooh, Dean, you got, your grandfather's here. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And so she proceeds to tell me that my grandfather's there. And now to let everybody else know, my grandfather was a World War I veteran, worked a lot with horses, or that's what he did. And, we were, I'm close to Grandpa, but, I was like, nothing against, I was thinking in my head, nothing against Grandpa, but why is he here?
Yeah.
Like, why is he showing up? Yeah. And she was like, well, he's here to support you after your deployment. And I was like, okay, well, where was he after? And I started just, like machine gun going off. Like, where was he after Bosnia? Where was he after Korea? Where was he after, And so, after so many years, you get a kind of a long list of places that you got to go or whether you wanted to or not. Yeah. And so she was like, well, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that he's here now. And I was like, oh my God, she just needs to leave. And so basically she, does her thing. She leaves and nothing. I wanted her to stop the craziness. Shauna, I wanted her to stop what was happening. I thought, the bibbity bobbity boo, the magical fairy godmother comes in and turns things. Just shut it off. Where's the button, right? Give me something. I'll shut it off. And that's what I was thinking. I was very ignorant. I didn't understand. And so quite honestly, things did not quiet down. Things didn't go away. They got louder, in fact. And my wife, because the kids started getting bugged, was like, you need to figure this out. And I was like, psychic lady over there, she, didn't do anything. Like, what am I supposed to do? Well, fast forward some time, a couple weeks go by, and I'm washing dishes about midnight and bottles for my son. Everybody's in bed except me. And I just kept on getting this creeped out, like, EBGBs, like somebody's behind me, right? Just every sense is telling me, oh my God, there's something freaky. And I turn around, of course, and there's nothing. There was just a darkened living room behind the kitchen. And I'm like, I'm just tired. I'm trying to put logic to it, trying to understand what was going on. And then all of a sudden, Sean, it was so weird, like just out of the blue, it was a knowing that it was immediate. It wasn't like start to think about, like I saw a flower and I thought about grandma. I immediately knew that my grandmother was with me. And then it was like, and I'm quite honestly out loud, thinking out loud, going, how do I know it's grandma? Like, taken by surprise. Like, how do I just know? And then I'm like answering myself, I don't know, but it's grandma and she's not here to hurt us. Like now I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going crazy. I'm talking to myself. I'm going to end up on meds. I'm going to be at the VA tomorrow. Right. And so I was like, you know what? I need to go to bed. But before I did, I was putting stuff away in a pantry right off the kitchen. And one of the things that, as I was putting bottles and stuff away in it, I noticed out of the corner of my eye a movement. And so I moved my head just in time. And it was so crazy. Our home at the time was an older 70s Rambler style home. And it had, and probably a lot of people remember this, but a lot of the light globes, you have that very iconic white globe with the kind of blue, looks like a hand painted scene on it, whatever. It's older.
Yeah.
And that fell. It was falling and it almost hit my head. And I moved my head just in time because I saw it. It hit my shoulder blade. And then it hit the floor and then it bounced around like a ping pong. It was just so weird. And it bounced around just like a pinball machine, like ding, ding, and then it just sat there and was spinning like somebody had just thrown it. And I was like, the typical like idiot guy, right? And I was like, I must not have tightened down the little screw like when I changed the light bulb, because again, and I was like, and I didn't even think anything of it. So I go to bed, laying there kind of, with my eyes closed, but I'm still very much awake. And I think it's really normal if somebody knows that a loved one is with them, like curiosity, number one, but number two, part of your heart wants to reconnect.
Yeah.
And it's just like, hey, I love you, miss you. What have you been up to? Do you, have you played with the kids? All that good stuff, catching up.
Yeah.
But I wasn't getting anything. It was like I was sending it all out. And then it was like I kind of had my ego is my drunk friend for me. So we all have the drunk friend, I call it. And to explain my definition of the drunk friend analogy is, the drunk friend always has words of wisdom that you should never follow and be like, oh, it's okay, just go do it. Right. And it's like, no, don't do that. Right. It's like
never follow the drunk friend.
My ego at the time was my drunk friend and was very much like, of course our ego is trying to protect us. And so my ego was like, Dean, this is just BS. We're making it up. You know what? If she was really here, almost kind of in a taunting way, she would prove it. Why don't you just prove that you're here? And so immediately, as soon as that thought left my head, the room turned absolutely frigid. Like you would have walked out in the Midwest in February. And I was like, holy bleep, 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 right? And I was like, and I had my eyes closed the whole time, but I knew that if the lights were on and my eyes were open, I knew that I would be able to see my breath. And I was like, holy crap. And then I was like, so then I think out of normalcy or a way to understand, I went back to, okay, maybe the wife has a fan on. Maybe the wife has a window open, in February. I don't think so. But, and so I was trying to figure out why that happened. And then of course, ego shows back up, you know, and be like, you know what? This is all BS. Let's just put it all to rest and really prove it. Why don't you touch me? If you can touch me, then I'll know without a doubt that it's real. And so I still remember it like yesterday, Shauna. It, was a gentle yet firm pressure that started at the top of my head, went to the bottom of my feet, and quite literally pushed me into the bed. Now, this wasn't something that was choking me. This was not something that was pounding on me. This was a gentle, and it was almost evenly distributed throughout so it's like if somebody was laying on top of me. And, I'm kind of a side sleeper. So the reason I share that is I could feel the bed kind of come up around me. And I could hear the springs compress. So you think about, like if you're wrestling or teasing with your kids, right? And you kind of, like one of them try to body slam you, or whatever, kids. And you hear the bed, and that in a sense, that's how it was. And I'm like, and it was, if she didn't have my attention by then, now she did, right? And it was like the 6-year-old little boy came out of me and was like, all right, Grandma, love you, see you soon. Like you got to leave.
Yeah.
And because now this is just too freaky.
Yeah.
And, and as soon as I said that, boom, everything went away. The weight, the temperature, everything returned like, hey, you were just dreaming, dude. And I'm sitting up in bed, completely out of breath, covered in sweat, going, oh my God, what is going on? What did I just experience? Am I having a am I having some trauma that, was repressed? I'm trying to analyze myself and I don't even know what I'm analyzing. I'm not certified to even, so I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And so I'm waking my wife up. So, and I don't know if you have kids, Shauna, but most moms that I have met, especially when their kids are little, do not sleep deep.
Oh no.
And she was sleeping like she had never slept in her life. And I'm like, you need to wake up. And I'm like, and she's expecting the house to be on fire or somebody breaking in. I said, somebody's here. And she's like, oh my God. And I was like, no, like there's a spirit here. She was like, how do you know? And I was like, I know, right? You need to go hold a voodoo chick. And she was like, Dean, it's like 2:00 in the morning. You need to go back to bed. Well, needless to say, I don't think I went back to sleep that evening. I think I watched, TV or whatever to occupy my brain. And really for me, Shauna, that was the culminating point for me. And what I say, my awakening, right? It's, if I could borrow a new age spiritual term, this awakening, but it was really, the come to Jesus moment of like, hey, snap out of it. But really I went more into like, holy crap, what was that? Why me? And why now? Like, here I am at that time, like here I was in my early 40s, and why now?
Why? Yeah.
And so I really went on a journey to figure it out. And of course, it was kind of crazy because around the same time, it was like somebody flipped a switch up in heaven, if you will. And it was just like I started getting messages. It was like literally if you had a message machine, like beep, you got a message, beep, you got a message. And I didn't know how to access them. And it was driving me literally almost, I don't want to say almost insane, but it was really frustrating. And actually, I wasn't saying anything. And for about 3 days, finally, I said, I almost kind of just, was crawling out of my skin. I said, I need to figure this thing out. And my wife's looking at me like, oh my God, I think he snapped. And I said, and then I told her what was happening. She was like, yeah, I agree. And so I really went on a journey of, figuring what this all meant. And so I went back to that lady that I was calling the voodoo chick. She was, she was somebody that I knew that was in this,
Right.
right?
Right.
And because I didn't travel those circles.
Right.
And so she said, well, why don't you read this book by John Edwards? It's called The Infinite Quest. It sets, talking about setting boundaries with spirit, because also around this time, spirits were bugging my daughter. And if you ever want to hear something really creepy, have like a 4-year-old little girl come into your room and go, Daddy, there's a man in my room, like at 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It's this fun, really.
It's fun.
Oh, yeah, really. It just, I still get the EBGBs. Plus, as a dad, right? You go flying in there, expect, like some
Man.
weirdo. Yeah, physically. And then I was like, and because all like everything is like alert, and then just protect. And then you run in there and it's like, oh, not physically, it's spiritually. And then it's like, and then you get a second to like, ooh, like, how do you do that? It's not like somebody you can tackle. It's like, what do you do for that? And so, so that was going on. And so I had to understand, I was like, I need to figure this out. It wasn't going away. It was only getting louder. And I didn't know what my abilities were. So quite honestly, when I went to her, she was like, well, you're a medium. And I was like, I don't want to be a medium. I don't want any of this. I just want to retire.
Yeah.
And I want to go I was going to go work for the VA in my area. That was the plan, 24 years military, go work another 10, 20 for the VA. Be good. The kids will be older. I'll be good.
Right.
Me and the wife can go retire on a Tahiti island or somewhere, right?
Yes.
But that wasn't to be. And so it was so crazy, because once I embraced, really in the beginning, it was more about figuring out, number one, that I was a medium. Number two, kind of poking around it and figuring out what being a medium meant for Dean McMurray. And that was a big one, because I read all these books, James Van Prague, John Edwards, Teresa Caputo was just coming on, kind of around that time or a little after, but there was others, Alison Dubois, and so you watch the movies, you watch the videos, you read the books, and then I went to some classes, and so I started exploring and understanding.
Right.
And, the more I understood about it, I was like, wow, this is kind of very interesting. But the thing that I would share is I was still very much that skeptical guy. And every time I would see something that I'm going, oh my God, this is just so hokey. And it was like my grandmother was sitting on my shoulder going, Dean, you remember when I came to visit? And be like, yeah, I remember. And then it wasn't like, hey, you better keep your, what in line. But it was, so if you can't explain it, but that it's real, and it's something bigger than you, why don't you stay open to what you're experiencing right now? And that's all she ever asked. How about you just stay open?
Yeah.
And then I was like, and so she kept on bringing me back to center of the experience that I had. That was my, oh my God moment, right? And so every time I was able to come back to that center, I was able to look at the event or whatever I was experiencing from a different angle. Cause I was kind of like doing, okay, I'd be like, all right, grandma, and so, but really I would and be like, okay, maybe there's something here for me to learn. What is it? And every time I did that, Shauna, I found that I was given a little sliver, or I was shown things, and it'd be like, whoa, that was really cool. And so what I started learning was, how about you just stay open? How about you do, so if I was like, okay, baby steps.
Yeah.
And over time, I started embracing, took a course in mediumship, started kind of embracing myself, even calling myself a medium.
Yeah.
But keeping it very quiet from the military community, except for a very small select few people that I supervise directly, because I was worried, what other what I was worried, I can't even speak. I was worried what other people were going to think of me,
Hmm.
honestly.
Yeah.
And that's, that's a big one for a lot of people in a lot of different parts of their life, right?
Right.
But I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be, oh my God, you get close to retirement and you just lose your marbles. And, but I was also worried about losing the respect from my superiors, and also my peers and subordinates and other folks, right?
Yeah.
And because, the military was my world and I had made up most of my, early adult life.
Right.
And so I kept it hidden for quite a long time. And then right before I started, and I should share, I started giving readings for about a year, really trying to hone and understand what was going on. I took
Right.
other classes and other modalities, learning, and really I kind of got a little addicting. Like I'll share is that because it got exciting. It was
Yeah.
like you get excited, right? So if you have a hobby or something out there and it's like, oh, I can't wait to do it again or do this,
Yeah.
because you would have these experiences that were just filled you up. And I really, hindsight looking back, I think what I was finding was the true sense of myself.
Yeah.
And I was finally connecting to that after 40 some odd years.
Yeah.
And I think the scariest part of it, all that, was really, coming out of the closet, so to speak, the metaphysical
Mhm.
closet. And, it was one of the things because, when I started looking at doing it as a business, as it built, right? My parents didn't even know because I
Oh.
was, I was scared. I was like, we all want to be accepted,
Right.
especially by our spouses, our kids,
Mhm.
our parents, our siblings, right?
Yeah.
We want to be seen and accepted on all levels. Doesn't have to be spiritual. And the fear of rejection sometimes can be debilitating. And so I was really keeping, like, if you didn't live in our house, or maybe a couple of guys that we would BS around the water cooler, so to speak, like, you wouldn't know because I had a big gear, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I started doing readings, it was kind of funny because people would just start calling me and be
Oh.
like, hey, are you the guy that does readings? And I'm like, who's this? Oh, this is Molly. You don't know me, but I'm a friend of a friend of a friend of so and so. And yeah, she got a reading and she really loved it. And I want to get a reading. So, I was wondering if I could schedule it. And that's how a conversation would go. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I do. And so I was like, wow, people are actually starting to seek me
Mhm.
out. And so that's when I went and that was the first time that I went and bought a appointment calendar book, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, fill in all work stuff, then the family stuff, my
Mhm.
daughter still in dance, from
Yep.
and all that stuff, right? So dance recitals and hey, we got to go to dentists and all that life
Right.
moments, we'll just call them. And then all the little cracks and crevices where you can fit your hobbies or your pastimes. Guess what? That became, the spiritual aspect of, okay, you have these times, that work not only for the family, but also for my schedule.
Mhm.
And so, quite honestly, back then it was, everybody was kind of coming to my house at the time and we would go in
Mhm.
the basement. And it was kind of funny in the back in the when all this started, and I was, and I was being called a medium by that psychic. I was like, oh, what does this mean? I'm going to be given readings in my basement. And I think there was somebody in heaven going, yeah, quite
Actually.
literally, you will be, and in Ubers and in tour boats and anywhere else that you're going to be asked to give readings, Dean. So yeah, you kind of will. They're probably just having a hell of a time and just laughing at my expense. But I was making fun of it. Ooh, am I? And, and quite honestly, when we moved, it was really close to me getting out, and we knew that I was going to do this as a business. We moved closer to the city. Well, we wanted to move into the city where we live now. And we started looking at homes, and we found the home that, obviously that we live in now. And one of the things that it was interesting, because the first thing that was ever painted and actually, how do I want to say, presentable, when you first move into a home, was the garage. And oddly enough, I know, weird. And but so I started giving readings when we moved here in my garage. And so I had a card table. We'd take the cars out. I backed the cars up in the thing. I'd give it a good sweep. And, I had everything nice. It looked nice in there. But yeah, I think back to it and I'm like, that was kind of crazy. And then, of course, we had the basement, kind of like where my office is now. It was, had it remodeled. And I still remember to this day, I think they had just did the sanding with the tape and the mudding and the drywall, but there wasn't even any flooring. It was just like plywood, and there was the tape and everything. So it looked like a construction zone, but I just swept up and I was like, hell, I'm just going to do the readings right in here. And so and so it was very echoey, and and I was like, it's nice, but it's just, it looks like you're in, some, I don't know, kind of different.
No offense. If I would have called and you said, meet me in my basement, it's in construction,
Right.
I would have been like, I'm out. Never mind.
Right. And I guess I never, I never told anybody like it was under construction.
Yeah.
What the funny thing was, is I was actually doing, there was a good handful of readings in the garage setup. And then there was one, it was just the timing of things, right? And I was like, oh, wow, we were going to paint, get the painting and flooring. And it was around that time frame. I was like, we'll just do it in here, because I think it was getting colder out. Of course, living in the Midwest, you got to go with the weather. Yeah. I was like, oh, it won't really work in the garage, and we're not going to do it in the family room. And I was like, well, we'll just do it in here. And it worked. Looking back, it's kind of unique. Yeah. And it kind of makes you laugh, but and they still got what they needed out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's been, good Lord, that's this whole journey is over 10 years ago.
Wow.
Coming up in May, I retired in May, or sorry, well, yeah, I retired in May, but that over 8 years ago. So,
okay.
So yeah, it's been crazy. And you never know. That's a cool thing. I never know how I'm going to be asked to show up, like, or like each day, like I might have somebody reach out and go, oh my God, Dean, I need some help. I think my home is haunted, or, oh my God, Dean, can you help me? I believe my congregation is haunted or possessed. And that's a crazy email to get.
Yeah.
So whether helping churches or homes or families, but then of course, I've been called into basically hospice units, with family, with a veteran, not always. And I got to add this is, everybody asks me, oh, you're in the military medium. Do you only work with military? No. Really, I didn't start calling myself that until, a while later.
Yeah.
So I work with everybody of all backgrounds, and, so yeah, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, it's awesome. Certainly interesting line of work. It's not not the traditional 9 to 5, and
no. So
but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Is there a difference in a psychic versus a medium?
So yes, there is. And I will also say, no, there is not.
Okay.
And let me explain.
Yes.
So I always teach this part to my students, because if you look up on the internet or if you listen to some people, the book answer is a psychic is somebody that is able to connect to maybe somebody's energy and read somebody's energy, right?
Okay.
And talk about the past, present, future, maybe somebody's aura, different things about the individual, right? And a medium, the true sense of a medium is to connect to and to communicate back and forth with those that have deceased, those that have crossed over, right? Now, that being said, I have met a tremendous amount of psychics that are very gifted mediums. And I have met a lot of mediums that are more psychic. So, it really comes up to, they do a lot of other things. So sometimes labels paint us in a corner. So one of the things I would share, since we're here, and I know we're going to get to a little bit down the road, but one of the things I would share maybe with your listeners is, if you're looking for, say, a medium or a psychic, ask specifically what you're looking for. If somebody says, I do Reiki, which is a form of healing, and say, oh, do you also do psychic readings? Or do you also do mediumship readings? If they only advertise or own the label of Psychic Cindy, whatever it is, or, Psychic Medium Dean McMurray. Oh, do you also do healing work? So get really specific. And I think a lot of people don't really know what they're wanting,
right?
Or they do, and they're just kind of timid.
Right.
So understand that they may possess the ability. They're just not, maybe in the label, it's just not maybe advertised as much. And a lot of times, if you're going to them, I know COVID's got a whole bunch of different rules, and each state is different. But a lot of times, unless you're at a psychic fair or some type of holistic fair, a lot of time, those vertical banners that maybe tells you all the services that so-and-so provides. A lot of times online, you don't see that around me. Although I do have one, but sometimes you just got to ask. So,
So with COVID, I mean, this sounds a whole different question. Are you doing readings then via like Zoom?
Yeah. So so interesting. That was a whole different animal, that one.
Yeah.
And it started well before COVID.
Oh, okay.
It was interesting because has it been 3 or 4 years? Quite some time ago, my son, out of necessity, he wasn't coping with school well, right? Just bad. And so out of necessity, we had to go to homeschool. And I was like, oh my God, what does this, mean? And I want to set the stage for everybody. So if back in the day before I did just online stuff, when clients would come to my home, that's my office here. And actually there's another part of my office where I actually have a nice sitting room and used to have like a spa, kind of set up. And so it was nice and relaxing. But people come in the front door and they would go through the family room and down into the basement and where the office is. So in a sense, you're going through pretty much almost the whole house to get to my office. And so it's kind of invasive. And so, if the kids aren't all away and, at daycare or school, what do you, you can't just, disappear, you just can't do that. And the other piece is that, of course we didn't have a dog then, but we have a dog now. And, of course you have to keep the home presentable. So it was always running around and picking up laundry that's accumulating on the family room couch, because that's our sorting table for,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's the laundry couch, right? That's real stuff.
Uh-huh.
It's like, but you want, and kind of trying to run the vacuum. It's almost like staging a house prior to selling it. Like, hey, somebody wants to look at your house 20, so you got like 20 minutes. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
So it was kind of invasive. It was a lot of energy. And then of course I would make sure the office, it was very pleasing to all the senses. So, so it was kind of like a lot of running around. And my wife suggested, have you ever thought about going all online? And I was like, oh my God, no. I was like, I'll be limiting myself.
Yeah.
And then it was getting more to the point with my son that, was pointing towards doing everything or, homeschool.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, when we were looking at that, I was like, there's no way that, he can be home and then, we try to juggle that and have clients coming in.
Right.
So we were like, well, we have the equipment, right? Most, we're talking through it right now.
Yep.
And so technology was there and supporting, obviously, that I was like, well, if I want to still do things in person, we can make other arrangements outside the home. Maybe that's a private, what I call a private psychic party. So maybe a private gathering at somebody's home, or, so if they live in the local area, maybe I travel to them, or, there's a metaphysical / rock shop here in our city, and they have a lot of readers. And so a lot of times they could rent space saying, hey, can I do readings here?
Yeah.
And so that was another option too. And of course, coffee shops and other things, but they're less as, how do I want to say? They're more public, right? And not as private.
Right.
And so, there was a mixed bag of different options. And so we finally I made the, finally pulled the trigger on that. And, it took a little bit because the people, when you change that dynamic, there was a lot of people that were disappointed because they were more, there was a lot of regulars that would love to come every 3-4 months, whatever, and get a reading. And that was kind of their deal. And when I stopped doing that, they're like, nah, I like doing the in-person thing. And I was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, but if you see me at this event or whatever, please come in, you're more than welcome. But so, I had to realize that it was more about me being okay with a new way of doing business.
Right.
And really, it was more about putting family first and saying, you know what, business is still going to be there.
Yeah.
If it's really meant what I'm supposed to be doing, business is going to show up. And because I'm doing this because it's a calling, I'm not doing this to, be the next millionaire, right?
Right.
So, the thing is that, it's, the technology was there to support it and everything else. So anyways, it was kind of interesting when the whole COVID thing hit. I had already been into doing readings. And then it was like, and I had always been offering readings by email. And, that's just a written format of the reading. It's not back and forth, we're having a conversation.
Right.
Obviously, but, some people like that option. And it's, you can do psychic or the medium aspect, but, it's a little less personal. I guess personally, I like doing the email readings for more psychic driven readings versus, because if I'm describing, say, a grandmother, it's like I have a female that steps forward on the mother side of the, and so everything that I would typically say, of course, you got to type it out. Yeah. And it's like, I have a female mom side of the family, and it's like, but you have to be descriptive. And so like what I'm seeing, I can't just say, so I really got to find the words to try to describe, she shows me, and then I, this flower, why is she showing me orchids? And, why, or talking about being buried on a Thursday, or, different things, or maybe the sun, so all the evidential information and like all that stuff goes into it. So, so I had always been offering those, so that never really changed. I just added it. And then, so yeah, and that, so along with the video aspect, and then of course, I always kept the option of saying, when things are safe, we'll do in person.
Try to do it.
But yeah, and then, but one of the things I don't care for masks. Of course, obviously, I wear a mask when I'm out.
Yeah.
But I make the choice that I don't like doing and I wouldn't want to do an event with a mask. So, if I have to be in person and wear a mask, and so, so I'm kind of, hey, if we can do it virtually, great. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait unless I can maybe get a glass wall. I don't know how those
build
things
the plexiglass.
Well, yes. Go in the booth.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Maybe a Zoom. You're sitting looking at each other, but you're Zoom, you be in the next room. I don't know.
There you go.
But sometimes people like a hug at the end, or or just knowing that you're sitting right there because they, feel better about that. There is more of a personal connection aspect, so, and then, so it's been, I guess, different.
Yeah.
But, certainly we made the change prior, and I'm really grateful for that. And of course I'm grateful for the technology, obviously, to allow us to do that. But,
for sure.
So phone, Zoom, whatever, we try to accommodate everybody. So, and then cool. I just want to add really quick too, what I also did with the readings, I realized, because the big emphasis on all the frontline workers, right? And of course, obviously, my heart is always with the military, but first responders, anybody in the medical community, any of that. And I thought, God, why not? I don't always get a chance to give back.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I could with readings. And so I started a COVID-19 give back, what I call the give back resolution, kind of like Operation Give Back.
Yeah.
And so basically, when somebody purchases a reading, basically what happens is I donate a like reading. So say somebody orders a half an hour reading with me, then I give a half an hour reading away to somebody either in the military, medical community, like fire, police, whatever.
Yeah.
And so a lot of nurses, and of course, most people in fire and police and stuff, even though I've connected with them over the years, they're so busy, right?
Right.
And as well as the nurses, military, and everybody else. But I've so I've been able to hand out like stacks of gift certificates and saying, hey, this, take this into work, hand this out to your friends. And so it's always fun to be able to do that and to help people where they're at, and something small, but
I think that's amazing. That's
cool.
So then how, I guess, tell me this, because you always so I had friends that went to a bachelorette party in New Orleans. They had a reading while they were there. And how, from just a typical person that's a little bit like you in that kind of skeptical mindset, you're walking by, especially in a city like that. I mean, door after door after door of these, come see the psychic. How do you really know they're legit or that they're worth like, how do you know?
How do I know?
I mean, how do the general public know? Like, how do we know?
Right. Well, here's what I would share is, first off, if you're really looking for reputable, what I call a reputable psychic, and I'm not saying that if you just because there's a lot of tremendous readers out there. So whether psychics or mediums or intuitives, whatever. I just want to say that up front. So regardless of whether they're just, you can walk in off the street and, at New Orleans or whatever. But what I would share first is if you're actually in the market for looking for a psychic medium or whatever, first off, go with word of mouth saying, hey, has anybody, and I know some people don't want other people to know that they're even seeking out mediums or whatever because of what people will think of them. And that's okay. But, first off, what are other people saying about them?
Okay.
Are there any reviews out there? And then kind of look at social media is great because you can kind of look at, what are they posting? What are they, are they doing any events? Can you see, kind of how they, I don't want to say how they operate, but do they give a demonstration of any readings?
Right.
And you might, because just to even see if you connect with them energetically first. And what I mean by that is sometimes you're like, you could have 100 people lined up and you might like, no, you might be nice enough, but no, I just don't, not feeling it. And it's like, ooh, there's something about this individual here. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's her energy, maybe it's her personality, but I like this person. So go with your gut. I always say go with your intuition. And that's your kind of like your inner, how do I want to say, gyroscope or compass, right? And really listening to and some people call it your soul's voice or the whisper from God, but your intuition knows. If you're getting bad vibes from somebody, I just want to say that it doesn't mean that they're an axe murderer. They might be, I don't know, but what I'm saying is it just doesn't mean it means that you're not energetic. There's not a match.
Yeah.
And so you can, whether you're looking for a psychic or a medium or anybody out there dating, right? Same thing, right? Think of the same thing. It's like, nah, they seem nice enough, but I don't know, something about them, maybe,
red flags.
just not a connection, right? So I see you later. Other people, you're like, stay the hell away from me.
Yes.
They could be very attractive, very everything on the outside got it going on, but there's something just bad. And your intuition's like, run, don't walk, run.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we made choices, growing up? They were like, well, that probably wasn't a good idea. Everything was going off like, no, don't do that. And then we were like, oh, it's going to be okay. And then ego comes out, right? That's drunk. It's like, oh, it's going to be okay. And it's like, but they're so cute or they're so funny or, oh, I'm with my friends. Right. And so anyways, I'm getting a little off track, but what I'm saying is trust your intuition.
Okay.
If you're not feeling it, don't do it. And the other thing is, I know this goes pretty big with a lot of ladies, if you will. But if you feel, safer going with a group of girls, you talked about, a bachelorette party. And so whether one comes to the site or whether you get, whether they go, and that's the same for guys too. Go, if you feel, bring somebody else with you. I know my wife and I, when we were first dating, we laugh about it now because we look back and she goes, do you remember one of our first dates? And we came in to town and she goes, and it was me that made the suggestion. I just saw, and it was like this little rundown shop in our area. It said psychic readings. Kind of probably like a New Orleans type deal, but we're in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's go get a reading. And I just spur of the moment, like, and she looked at me like, and it was kind of shady. Right. But she was accurate. I don't even remember, but I was like, was she even any good? And my wife was like, yeah, she talked about this and this, and of course she remembers more than I do, but I was like, huh. And I was like, that was some shady
That's
stuff. But anyways, but what I'm sharing is, kind
yeah.
of, if you feel safer in numbers, do that. But
Okay.
by all means, but go
Yeah.
with your gut. That's what I would share
Okay.
for anybody doing anything. Go with your intuition. But
Yeah.
if you're doing the pre-shopping, just like anything else, word of mouth. Um, hey, or if you have somebody in mind, hey, has anybody gotten a reading from this individual?
Right.
I don't care who they are.
Yeah.
So,
Check it out.
see what other people are, really saying about them and saying,
Yeah.
what would you think about their reading?
Yeah.
Did you like it? Did you not? Maybe you don't travel in those circles. Then again, go to social media, just kind of Google them and
Yeah.
see what comes up. Google's your friend sometimes.
So if someone hires you, what should they expect from you?
Sure. So we start with chicken feet. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
kidding.
good.
Well, the chicken
You have
feet
them
thing.
like candles
Uh,
all around them, and okay, good.
no, you're right. No. So, if somebody hires me for a reading per se, and so basically what they're going to get is they're going to get a confirmation with like a Zoom link and all that.
Mhm.
And basically on the day and the time, we just connect.
Mhm.
And just kind of like we're showing up now, you probably get the same, maybe a different t-shirt on, right?
Yeah.
Hope.
Yeah.
Anyways, and really it's just, I like to say, even when people are coming in my office in person, I like to say, it's just, think of it as a conversation.
Mhm.
And I always, start off with this. If they've never had a reading from me, is my belief is a medium is a medium is a medium, meaning we all do the same thing, but we all do it differently.
Okay.
And the thing that I share is that the way that I work is I will connect to them and I'll connect to spirit stepping forward to communicate with them. I'll give them a description of who I'm seeing and sensing and the details that's coming through. And then I'll take a brief pause and ask them if that's somebody that they can recognize and or validate with. And
Yeah.
if they can, beautiful, we'll go ahead and deliver their message.
Yeah.
If we can't, we'll go back and get as much information as I can. And if they still can't validate, I will still deliver the message and trust that who it is and their message will make sense a bit down the road.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, pretty straight and
Cool.
simple. Like, nothing crazy. I don't record it. So they don't get recording. If they want to have a couple people just to observe the reading, like, hey, can I bring a girlfriend or my husband or my mom or my dad? Absolutely. I don't care if you have a whole crowd of people around you. That's up to you. It's your reading.
Mhm.
The thing that I would share is that, but that's this thing. It's just the one reading for the individual, unless we make arrangements for doing more than one,
Yeah.
obviously.
Okay.
And then of course the readings are completely confidential. I don't share the information of the details with other people. Now, there have been a few exceptions with that rule. And if spirit taps me on the shoulder and be like, this would be really good to share with others for healing, or there's somebody else that needs to hear this story. And so I always ask the individual, do you mind if I share your story
Okay.
and your reading? I won't share any personal information.
Right.
I won't even use your real name, and and if they tell me no, then I'd be like, okay, I respect that. I
Yeah.
won't say
Right.
anything about it.
Right.
But if, and I don't think in the 10 or so years that I've been doing this, I don't think I've ever had anybody that, have said, no, I don't remember that. So,
Okay. That's
so
cool.
yeah. So, yeah. So,
Okay.
and if people get uncomfortable with the reading, which they shouldn't, they can certainly tell me to stop. And I've only had that happen once. I got to share, be quite honest, because I was connecting. There was a mom that came in and I was connecting to her baby, and her baby was coming through. Well, I should share is her son was a bit older when he passed, but it was her baby, right?
Mhm.
And so, but meaning older, meaning like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a pretty emotional one. And she said, you got to stop now.
Yeah.
I can't, it's too much.
Yeah.
And I said, I respect that.
Yeah.
And
For
I
sure.
said, we'll stop.
Yeah.
I said, that's okay.
So,
And so,
do you ever, like, in the grocery store, you're looking around like, who does this apply to? Because you've got something like, I have to
sometimes,
ask.
yeah. No, because you see it on TV. People ask it all the time. Oh, do you go in and go, oh my God, you have a grandmother coming for? No, I don't, and there's a lot that you don't see in those TV series, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of editing.
Yes.
And I'll share a little bit about my experience with some TV stuff. But so sometimes, yes. Will I start seeing like spirits like hanging around? Like one time I went to an Olive Garden to get takeout or something. This was years ago. And I was like, whoa, there's like a dad spirit here, like behind the bar. And he kept on following this one guy around. They're busy running around doing their thing.
Right.
And I was like, he is totally like that guy's dad. But I was like, for me, here's the way that I work. I won't roll up to you on a street and I won't ever give you just going, oh my God, I'm a psychic medium and you got a dead grandmother with you, or your deceased father is here and he wants you to know. I will never do that.
Yeah.
I will never do that, because here's why. Is because personally and as an individual, I don't give anybody permission just to automatically read me. And I believe it is a violation of a person's space to pre-read somebody, in a sense of just start reading somebody.
Okay.
Now, if I pick up on a spirit and that, spirit's hanging out, maybe I'll just give a hypothetical situation. And and so I'm picking up on the spirit, and if in my mind I go, hey, if you want me to deliver your message to your son, then you make that happen. And so maybe it comes up and, hey, you want another drink? So what do you do for a living? And so maybe it strikes up the conversation just out of curiosity and saying, I'm a psychic medium.
Yeah.
And I always, of course, like most, really, it's like,
yes.
What's that like, and so, and it actually happened in an Uber one time in Minneapolis, Super Bowl weekend, actually. And I was going to my agent was having me go to this party for networking. And funny, it was, of course, the guy, was saying, what do you do? And I said, I'm a psychic medium. And he was like, and he wasn't from this country originally. And so he didn't quite know. And I said, I talk to dead people. And he was like, I was like, easy, dude. Like, I know you're driving here. And he was like, would you give me a reading? And I was like, are you sure? Like, don't be careful what you ask for. Like,
yeah,
people ask it like on, just off the cuff, like, hey, can you read me? Can you read? And it was like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah. And so I started connecting, and he started tearing up, and he was like, that's my grandmother. And he was talking about that, and talking about her story, and it was just really emotional. I was like, oh God, now he's driving, he's emotional. And I was like, where's my seatbelt, right? So, and it's like, but yeah, so sometimes does it come about, but I won't just roll up to somebody and go, I'm a psychic medium, and because I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me.
Yeah.
And I don't walk around reading people. People always get like they clam up around me. They get nervous when they know I'm a medium, because they think I'm reading them. And that's not the case, because a lot of times I don't want to be the medium.
Yeah.
Really. Sometimes I just want to be Dean McMurray.
Right.
I just want to take off my, the hat, the mediumship hat, and saying, I just want to maybe sometimes I don't want to be the dad,
Mm-hmm.
even though I love my kids and I love my
Right.
wife, but sometimes we just want to be us and saying, I just want to go fishing today, and not do it, even though, being a dad is part of who I am. Being a soldier is that,
Right.
there's a lot of things, but it doesn't define you.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just want to be able to kind of let that guard down going, and the other thing that I would share is a lot of people, connect to me. Um, in fact, it was just recently this business owner goes, "Oh my God, Dean, do you remember the reading that you gave me 4 years ago and said my name would be in lights?" And I said, I don't remember even giving you a reading, because that's the way it works for me. As soon as I give somebody a reading, it's like it gets flushed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't want to carry hundreds and hundreds or even thousands, over the years. Think how
Right.
many readings you would do.
Right.
And why would you want to carry all that?
A lot.
Because I always joke and say, you know what? I don't make balloon animals for a living. And that's a lot of heaviness
Yeah.
that people
Yeah.
are carrying because of grief or because of guilt, because maybe they had to take mom or dad off of the life support, and
Yeah.
they carry, or they
Right.
want validation at some level that they've made good life decisions,
Mm-hmm.
or they just want to connect one more time, or the
Right.
guilt that they weren't able to make it home to see them prior to passing,
Yeah.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so
A lot.
sometimes it can be, and sometimes it can be just so hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I want to share one funny thing though, is I did a gallery one time, a big group of people, and I was connecting to this older lady in spirit, and this kind of more, I'll just say her look was a bit rougher, if you will.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, and she was like, yeah, that's my grandma, right? And I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, oh, she starts talking about, making bail or something. I was like, did grandma, get you out of jail? And it was just an assumption because the way she presented herself,
Yeah.
right? And she was like, no, I busted grandma out of jail. Like she got and I was like, and she was just the sweetest little old lady. And and I was like, oh, this is going to be such a good reading. And it was just so hilarious. She was like, my grandma was such a badass. And she goes
Oh
on,
my
and here
gosh.
she was, just a frail old lady, but she was just a total, like you
That's
think of,
awesome.
like almost like this total badass biker grandma. And
That's
I was like,
awesome.
oh my God, she's so cool. I was like, and I was like, you can't make this crap up. I was
That's
like, oh my God.
hilarious. So
Yes.
people, you hear the people that say, oh, I saw cardinals, so someone visited, or like
Yep.
the 1111 thing. You've kind of
Yep.
heard about that.
Repeating
So,
numbers. Yep.
you know, I see 1111 a lot. And
Yep.
recently, this is super random, but they're on my drive to work.
Uh-huh.
There's a set of cardinals, and it's a male and female
Yep.
that are in the same bush every day. And
Mm.
they drive, and I always have this smile when I see them, like, just because you've heard that your
Right.
whole life. Is
Mhm.
there any validity to those things, or is it just something that us as society have kind of latched onto?
Right. No, I completely believe in that.
Okay.
That spirit is able to send animals as, signs of love and hope, and not just, spirit loved ones in spirit, but also our, angels, and
Yeah.
those around us supporting us in a loving way, and saying, you think about it, when you just said it, is when you look at it, you kind of smile, and
Mhm.
it brings in like, oh, they're nice to look at. But it's like, you also attach that with the knowing that, what you've been told, right?
Yeah.
And saying, well, somebody's supporting me, or, I'm loved somewhere, right? In that aspect of,
Mhm.
oh, that's cool. Hi, and
Yeah.
so absolutely. Do I believe it? Because I've also seen animals behave in very what I would call very peculiar, I can't
Yeah.
even speak, um, ways when they and behaviors what they typically wouldn't. So a lot of insects and animals typically don't get right up in your face, except like maybe mosquitoes or other
Right.
things. But typically, they stay their distance because they're kind of wary. And so if you're having animals that are exhibiting like, in the same bush, I mean, hello, this
Yeah.
what appears to be the same birds every day.
Yes.
Cardinals are a big one. And of course, is it always No, I get it. Cardinals are a migratory bird. You typically see those more in the winter, and especially in the northern states. I get it. But at the same time, here's the deal: is spirit's going to use what's handy. And so in the middle of January or February, are you going to see a bluebird? No.
Probably not.
And maybe if you live down south, but chances are not up north, right? Might be frozen,
Yeah.
and so it might be kind of hard. So what I would share is, no, I really do. I am a firm believer in spirit sending, um, animals as a sign of, hey, we're here, we love you. Just letting you know that we're around. Now, the numbers, the angel signs, they say, or so Jareen Virtue was a big one. She was known pretty much all over kind of the world when she was when she was more in a spiritual aspect. I know she's changed over to a traditional religious in the last, I don't know, has it been 4 or 5 years now? And but she did a big book, and it was all about angel numbers, and each number means, I think, was 1 to 999, I think was something like that. And each number, whatever it was, meant something. And it was kind of like an associated message, and it was kind of cool because it was, we look, oh, what's that one? And but the biggest thing is I see them all the time too. And there's too many when it comes to numbers and time and license plate. There's too much randomness in my, I guess, because I also, there's always an aspect of me that tries to bridge the logical and the spiritual, metaphysical. And I'm thinking, wow, the possibilities, the numbers, the sequences and numbers, like how can you always get it? Like, seems like every time I look, it's 111 or 1111, or it could be six, all sixes, or it could be fives, or whatever it is. And saying, there is a serendipitous piece about it, and saying, huh, I think I'm seeing a correlation here. And number one, I would say, if people are noticing those, kudos to you, because you're being self-aware, and that's huge. Number two, I would say also, is look beyond the numbers, because those are just visual reminders. There's more to it.
Yeah.
So if you're noticing the numbers, if you're noticing the spirit signs or whatever, like, you talk about animals, but of course there's others. There's bottle caps and dimes and nickels and feathers that just miraculously, I've heard all kinds of crazy stories. People talking about where they're eating dinner and all of a sudden one will just, materialize out of thin air, right?
Yeah.
And, float down from the ceiling. So really cool stories about, what they call an apport is actually the term. But what I would share is that, there's more to it. And so whether you want to dig on that or not, but, so, and all you have to simply say is thank you, whether you believe it or not. And if you're having a hard time buying into it, going, here's what I would share when it comes to signs: ask for something that's specific to you.
Okay.
So, for example, blue butterflies or whatever, something maybe that really means something to you. Or here's a better one. Ask for something you never see. And I'll give you an example. Going back a couple of years, I was trying to get some clarification from Spirit, and I was being kind of a smart aleck about it. And I said, I want to see a pink unicorn. And I was like, yeah, right. And so I was driving in my neighborhood later that day. And what do you figure was on a table in a yard at a rummage sale? Was a big old stuffed pink unicorn. And I just happened to look over and I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I said, okay. And then I said out loud in the car, I want to see a real one. And I thought, well, later on, I was on social media at home. Somebody had photoshopped a photo of a horse. It was a pink unicorn. I was like, all right, smarties, and I was like, all right. And I was like, how much more validation do you want? Right? And so I was like, okay, I get it. So, yeah. So, another one I did was I never saw ninja throwing stars. So I asked about, show me ninja throwing stars. I was like, I never see those.
Yeah.
And then there was like a pop-up window one time that it was the book cover that popped up was called The Sword Thief. And it's got all these ninja throwing stars. I think I got the printout because I was like, no way, look at it. And I had to print it off. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really cool when you start seeing the signs, and you start almost using it to, I don't want to say a communication tool, but almost like breadcrumbs, right? Yeah. And what I mean by that is, if it's in your highest good to maybe take a course, or maybe, maybe somebody that's, thinking about dating somebody else. Do they have my best interests at heart, or do they maybe a business partner, maybe investing, whatever, or whatever the case is, maybe that new car you're looking at.
Yeah.
Something for your kids. Sky's the limit. You can ask.
Yeah.
So you just got to ask in the right way, I guess, because sometimes it can be, you got to get specific, but anyways, what I'm trying to say is,
go ahead.
Go.
One last thing before we close out.
Yes.
So really, this is more advice for my sister. And when I tell you the story, you'll understand why. So my nephew, from a super young age, he's now 7 or 8.
Yeah.
You would hear him playing by himself in his room. Never thought anything of it until he starts describing my grandpa, my sister and I's grandpa, who died when I was 16. She was like 12 or 13.
Yep.
So there would have been no way for her son to know this man in any form.
Yep.
And it's not because he had been dead lots of years. We didn't have family pictures out with him. It was with my grandma, who is, still alive. But he would vividly describe this man and his plaid shirt and his glasses and his color hair. I mean, like that. Have we shown, like, you start talking to your family, have we shown him a picture of grandpa? Has he seen, like, he has never seen a picture of this man, but he was like, oh yeah, he would come and play with me. We would play trucks. We would do like crazy. Yeah. So she would be telling people, and of course it made her nervous. Yeah. And any advice you give to kind of that parent that's like, what do I do? At this point, being 7 or 8, if it happens, she just kind of goes, okay, grandpa, like, enjoy him, love him, whatever. But at first, I mean, it freaked her out.
Sure. No, that's super common.
Okay.
Super common, happens really all the time. But very common to also freak mom out because hello, grandpa died when, so, you're trying to make your, as again, kind of going back to my story, you're trying to put logic to it. Like, how are you showing up and, kind of freaking you out. Right. And then also as a parent, you're like, you're with the kids, So yeah, so the thing that I would share is that it happened to our daughters. Or our daughter even did that as well. She did not know my um or she was a super young baby. That was the case when she died. My wife's aunt Louise, whom everybody called her Aunt Wheezy, and she died when my daughter was still a infant.
Okay.
And but one of the things was one day they were going through a family album, and my daughter was just really young, and they came to a picture of her Aunt Louise, and of course my daughter goes, well, who's that? And she goes, well, that's Aunt Louise. She had rheumatoid arthritis. She had a lot of stuff going on. And my daughter goes, she doesn't look like that anymore.
Oh.
She was like, when I saw her, she doesn't look like that. And my wife, even though we were like already on her journey, right?
Yeah.
She was like, what do you mean? Like, and she was like, yeah, like, Auntie Wheezy, like she came, like, and so very common that deceased loved ones coming in and either visiting, like sometimes, even when my daughter was a baby, I still remember my son, remember like they would be staring, like into the corner or up at a corner of a room, and just like transfixed, and there's nothing there that you can physically see.
Right.
And so what we've come to terms with is the saying, if you as a parent don't feel that there's anything malevolent, that's saying, that's okay, that's just an angel, that's or it's grandma or grandpa, saying
Right.
that they're here to, so you're bringing a sense of a peace and calming with it, and saying they're not here to hurt you.
Yeah.
They're just here to say, hey, I love you, hey, what's going on? And so that's cool to hear that your sister is saying, with her son, that's saying, yeah, just go and hang out, I guess.
Yeah. Well, because you could tell from him, he's like, yeah, he comes and plays. Like it wasn't
a big deal
for him. His biggest thing was, why don't I see him when we go to family things? Why isn't he there when we all hang out? Like that was his biggest question of, he shows up in my room, but I don't see him when we're all together.
Right.
But yet at the same time, it wasn't this like, I'm scared, something's not right. We play, he's fun,
Yeah.
And so
kids are super intuitive, and
yes,
and when they're first born, kids are not inundated with the thoughts and beliefs that, as we get older into adolescence, there's a period around, there is no magic age, but typically around the age of 10 or maybe a little older, the kids make the decision that either with those deceased loved ones, that either it's too freaky, and they shut it down, or maybe or if they share it with the parents, that the parents are like, oh, you're just having a bad dream, and so they just kind of, what I call, poo-poo it away, right? And they just kind of file it in their head of, that's just something that just kind of gets repressed,
right.
and then at some point later in life it tends to pop back out. And so understand that kids are extremely intuitive, and there's and it's so common to hear that time and time again about kids seeing grandma, grandpa, or mom, or dad, or whomever, even random spirits. There's a little boy, I play with another little boy, or all kinds of stuff. So they're very well connected.
Okay. So let's close it out. What advice do you have for someone that's maybe seeking out some healing or some comfort from someone on the other side?
So what I would share is, number one, do your research, find a reputable psychic or medium, whomever you're looking for. And again, ask word of mouth, do your research, your due diligence. It's your money. And then, use your gut, use your intuition. If it doesn't feel right, then move on. Don't have to make a big production of it. So, yep, just do your due diligence prior.
Okay. I want to thank Dean for joining us today. Such an interesting conversation. I appreciate you so much. For all those people who are watching on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe to our page, like this video below, comment. I'll make sure I share those with Dean so that he can see anybody's comments. If you're listening on our podcast service, make sure to favorite our podcast so that you can catch us every week when we release our next one. I hope everyone had a wonderful week. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next time.